Hi there, Prairie Plant Girl here. Today I'm going to be potting up some of my dahlias. I'm not sure how many I'm going to get through, but I just wanted to show you a little bit of what I'm going to be doing. I did things a little bit different this year. Usually I just take my dahlias, which are stored in crates or boxes or really whatever I have. Sometimes it's Rubbermaid containers. I prefer to store them in vermiculite, which is what this is here. It's just basically like a rock or a mineral that's been heated and exploded kind of, and it's really good at holding moisture but also releasing moisture when things get dry around it. But anyway, so this year I took a lot of my tubers out of my storage crates and I divided them up, and I did that several weeks ago now. And then what I did is I took them and not all, some of them are still in the crates, but a lot of them were looking a little bit dried and shriveled up. And so I just took them and set them in these little containers. These are just like containers meat came from the grocery store in, and I've cleaned them out. And I just moistened this vermiculite and set the tubers in here. And hopefully you can see they're starting to grow roots. There's really fine roots coming off here. And some of them are growing shoots. And that's what I wanted to see, because some of these I just wasn't sure how viable they were, because they were looking so dried up and shriveled up. Like this one here, this one is actually molded. Some of these I think I got the vermiculite a little bit too wet on, and this one looks like it might just have gone rotten on me and moldy, so I'll probably just wind up throwing this one away. But hopefully you can see how just very shriveled up it was. And so I just wanted to see before I bothered using soil and or potting mix and filling up pots and taking up space. Before I bothered doing that, I just wanted to see how viable they were. Now, yeah, this one is mushy and rotten over here, and the rest haven't done anything. So I think I'm going to take this one and just get rid of it. It was a cafe au lait cream, so I'll just toss it out of my way. And this one that was in here with it, it doesn't look like it's done anything either. And that's, yeah, the cafe au laits, some of them were looking really dried out, and now I may have just put too much moisture in the vermiculite. I tried to just get it damp, but I wasn't exact with it. This one definitely has shoots on it. This is, where's the tag for this tray? Some of them I just set the tags, yeah. So this is Orange Dreamsicle. Oh, I really liked this one last year, and it only started to produce late in the season. I received them late through mail order. But yeah, and this here you can see all these roots hanging down. These are new roots, and there's a few shoots there. So I'll be able to pot those up for sure. And then over here, this, is another Orange Dreamsicle. And I can see little shoots coming off over here. Hopefully you can see that little shoot there, and I can see one right here. Hopefully these, I think there's at least 2 in here, so those will be good. And I have a few more to go through. So I thought I would just show you really quickly what I do to try and pot my, pot my dahlias up. And it's the same whether I take them out of regular storage or these here where I've had them sitting in this vermiculite, this damp vermiculite, just sprouting for a few days. So the ones that I have still in buckets of just dry vermiculite just being stored, they're in a cool place now, whereas these have been in my house in regular room temperature. They were actually sitting in a bathtub that we only use for the dog. So it's a good out of the way place that I could put them there safe from the dog, and they could be sitting in this kind of dampish vermiculite and in a warm temperature, and that was going to encourage them to break dormancy and sprout if they needed to. And then that gave me an idea of which of these that I just wasn't too sure about after I divided them, which ones were actually going to be good viable tubers and which just were duds and just needed to be tossed. I've heard that these cafe au laits don't store well. Those were all new, I think, last year. I think I got them like at a big box store. So unfortunately, at least these here, I do have a few more trays of them, so we'll see, but at least those there aren't going to be any good for me. But you know, it's worth a try to store them, and usually you'll get results like this. These are beautiful tubers, nice big clumps. Like I said, I've already divided some of them, and I just went through and I found the stem from the old growth, And sometimes you'll have two stems on a clump, and you can just kind of easily just kind of pull them apart and work them apart. And sometimes you'll just go and look where there's some eyes coming out, and it'll just be like, you'll have your main tuber here, and then you have kind of a narrowing part of the tuber that's the neck, and then there's a little bit of an enlarged part. And usually there'll be a little bit of a bump that's a growth point, and that's your eye. So you want to have at least one eye with the neck and the tuber on a piece that you're going to plant and grow, and that's what you need in order to have a successful growing plant. I like to leave them in a little bit larger clumps like this if I can, because then I just think I get a larger plant out of it, and I think they'll survive better and I don't know for sure, but I just think if the conditions, if they get a little bit dried out or a little bit too wet or something, I think a larger clump probably helps them to mitigate the less than perfect circumstances a little bit. I could be wrong, I don't know. But that's just my thinking of it. So I like to leave them in a little bit larger clumps if I can. So let me get this tray that's rotten out of the way. And then I just have some just some regular potting soil here, and I've mixed just a little bit of perlite into it. You could put some bone meal or slow release fertilizer in here if you wanted to. Lots of years I do that. I didn't do that this year. That stuff's out in my potting shed, and we're in the middle of a freak winter April storm, and I just don't want to go out and trudge through the snow and go digging through my shed to get it out. So that's fine, they'll be fine. I'll just use water soluble fertilizer when I water them. So again, my larger pots are also out in my shed. I like to usually do this out on the patio on a nice warm March or April day. So I'm hoping I can get most of them to fit in these containers. Now these two might not work. I do have a few of these containers here. So it's really simple. And I'm just going to show you this real quick, and then I'm just going to get on with getting this done. But it's really simple to pot your dahlias. So you just put a little bit of soil in the bottom. And if you caught my my canna video where I was pre-sprouting or potting up some cannas to put in the house to pre-sprout, then it's pretty much the same thing. So just put a little bit of soil in the bottom, and I'm just going to set my dahlia in. Now there's two different ways that you can do this, and this dahlia I'm going to do the one way. So you can see how there's a real empty spot at the top here if I set these on the ground. So I'm going to actually go and take my soil, and I'm going to make kind of a pile in the center for the center of the bulb to sit on. So I'm just going to kind of make like a cone or a high spot in the center of this pot, and then I'll just set my dahlia tuber on top of that so I can kind of nestle it into that high spot. And since I know where the sprouts are coming up on this one, I'll be able to know exactly which way to put your tuber. But I just lay them flat, and usually they work their way up, even if sometimes it's upside down. You may have noticed this one when I pulled it out of the vermiculite was upside down. The sprouts were going towards the bottom of this container here, but that's fine. They'll figure their way up. They'll find the light. So I'm just going to fill the rest in. And the only thing with dahlias that's a little bit different than the cannas that you may have seen is I do a lot more like kind of shaking and wiggling of the pot, just because there are so many more fingers and nooks and crannies on a dahlia, and I want to make sure that there's soil in all of those little areas. So I had this covered, did a little shake, and you can see there's some of the tuber sticking out again. So it's worked its way into those little crannies and holes between all the little parts of the tuber. Cover it up again. Settle it down again. I see one more little bit there. So now I think I've got the whole tuber very well covered from underneath and on top, all around the sides. Dahlias, what I like to do is just cover up the tuber. I'm not normally dealing with sprouted tubers, but it won't be much different. And then I just will leave them, and when they start to sprout, I'm actually going to add more soil. So as the sprouts grow up above the soil, I'm just going to keep going in and adding more soil to the top and keep covering them up. It won't hurt the shoots to be covered up with the soil again, but I like to know that something's happening, especially like with these that are already pre-sprouted. Not as big of a deal, I guess, to if I wanted to just cover them a little bit deeper. But with tubers that have 0 sprouts on them, and I'm just not sure, you know, if they're gonna come up or not from year to year, so I like to just barely cover them, so as soon as something starts to happen, I know what's happening. So then normally I would moisten my soil, but because I'm working inside here and it's kind of messy with these big pots and that I haven't, so I will just give them a little bit of moisture just to kind of get the soil slightly damp. These that have started growing, I'll probably give just a little bit more, but really until they're really growing quite a lot and you know, needing a lot of moisture, then I'm going to keep them a little bit more on the dry side. And when they're sprouting like this, like I said, nice bright sunny spot or under some grow lights if you have space for them. And they definitely cannot be going outside until you're past all your risk of frost. So dahlias are a warm climate plant. They're also a pretty heavy feeder. Now I've seen some people find that they just give them a really good feed when they plant them. They don't fertilize them again. I grow my dahlias mostly in pots, and so I think that makes a difference. So if you're growing in pots, for sure I would be going in with regular good quality fertilizer once a month. And if they're in the ground and you have good fertile soil, then I would just probably put some fertilizer in when I plant them, and then they're probably good, you know, at least till halfway through the season. Maybe give them another top dressing of fertilizer and then keep going. But dahlias, once they get growing, they do like nice consistent moisture. So, you know, at this point you don't want to overwater them or they'll rot, like you saw with those couple that I had in too damp of vermiculite. But once they start growing, they do like good consistent water. They don't want to be drying out. So this little tray is Boom Boom White Dahlia. These took a long time. Again, they were mail order, came in late for me last year and didn't really do a whole lot. And they don't seem like they overwintered well. Oh, this one has roots on it. Oh, look at all the roots on this. You see that? That's all new fresh roots. So this one I will definitely plant. Let's see what else is in here. Oh, lots of roots on this one. Oh, that's good. I was worried that these weren't going to be any good this year. I really want them to do well. I'd say this one is really shriveled up and dried out still, so I would say it's definitely no good. And actually comparing this to these other two, when I really look at it, like it's, I don't know if you can see that, like I can squish this tuber. It's not like rotten squishy, but it's like completely dried out squishy. There's just nothing left to it, so that one's definitely no good. I'm just going to keep going through these trays. You know what? From what I'm seeing, I think this method of taking them and dividing them early on in the spring, I did that about a month ago, and putting them in these little trays of vermiculite just to sit, you know, it took up a lot less space because I had them kind of stacked up until I saw sprouts on some of them, and then I had to move them out a little bit more, but it takes up a lot less space. And then I know that the tubers I'm planting should be good, viable tubers. So I think that might be the way I go, you know, in the following years. I do have a few more that are still in crates that I'm going to need to deal with, that I didn't do the sprouting method with just because they looked like good healthy tubers, and so I just put them back in the crates and had them in the garage because then they're out of my way. But I'm really liking this. It'll be interesting to see how they sprout compared to the ones that are in the garage still in storage. You know, if the growth rate is different, but yeah, because once I get through all these little trays, I'm going to get out to the ones in the garage and get those done as well. Then I just put them on huge boot trays. I put a towel underneath the boot tray just in case it had any sort of leak in it, but it shouldn't. And most of these, because most of these are already in active growth, I'll put on that boot tray right in front of a nice bright window. And that's just where they're going to sit until it's time to put them out. But yeah, I'm really liking this. I'm glad I decided to do that with those few. This really, you know what you're getting into when you've already sprouted them a bit. So I've gotten through all of the pre-sprouted dahlia tubers that I had. All the ones that I had, like I said, put in the little trays in the damp vermiculite. And most of those had some roots or sprouts or something on them, so that was excellent. I did have a few that I had to throw away that just didn't make it, but for a bunch of tubers that I just wasn't sure about when I started, I was pretty happy with what I saw from that. Now I'm into the ones that I had left in the crates because they looked really good, so I had no concerns about them sprouting or anything like that. So I've taken the vermiculite off obviously now and brought them in. I just had a couple of clumps out there still. Move those out of the way. But I wanted to just show you real quickly. So I have 2 clumps tied together. So these were one clump by the looks of things that I've separated. Let's see if I can get this. So I just had tied them together just with their label when I had separated them. So I'm going to be kind of careful because there's good shoots on here that you can see. So hopefully you can see that there. This is like the old stem right here. And here's the main tubers, and then this would be like the little bit of a neck, and there's little growth points coming like here, 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 and then you can see this flat side here. This is where it was connected to this piece over here. So these are nice big healthy tubers, and that's just how I divided them. Now I can see on this one I have a few really small gangly little pieces. So with my snips that I've disinfected, I'm going to go and just chop those off of here. This one might be all right, but there's enough good pieces on here that I don't think that's required. And otherwise, these are really nice healthy tubers. Now, like I said, these were still out in my garage, which is cool, in fairly dry vermiculite. So they've started to form their eyes up at the top here like a potato tuber would if you've sprouted potato tubers, but they haven't put on roots yet, but that's just fine. So those pieces that I just cut off, I'm just going to toss. And then this one here has just a couple of little growth points started on it, but not as many, but it's still looking really good. So again, here's the tuber. There's a little bit of a neck, and then the growth points are up here. I'll leave this smaller tuber just because there's just the 2 on here. They're nice and healthy. I could take it off and it would be fine, but may as well let it grow and develop. And I can probably wind up dividing this down this way in the fall. And I probably could right now because I think there's growth point here, and I think there's a little one starting right there. But I don't mind having a little bit larger tubers. I think it just grows a bigger, healthier plant. So I'm going to plant these 2 like this. So this one I'll set in the pot if I can make it fit like this. And this one I'll just go straight up and down because that's the way it seems like it would sit the best in a pot without having a huge pot. The bigger the pot I have inside, the more space it's going to just take up, and the more potting mix I'm going to need for it. And just to give you a really good example of a different variety of tubers, because tubers for dahlias can look totally different. Even between the same variety, they can look quite different, but this one is Crazy Love. I don't know if this was Cafe au Lait over here, and this is Crazy Love. And again, this was out in the garage, not really doing much. This one actually looks like it might have been, you probably won't be able to tell, but there's a few fresh looking roots coming out down here. There is some older ones. They won't do anything. You could cut all those old ones off. They won't do anything, but it does look like there's a few really white, fresh roots coming out already down there. The eyes are a little bit harder to see on this one. and I'm getting older, but there's definitely a little bulge right there. I'd say there's an eye. I think there's one right there. I think there's a growth point right there, one there, and maybe one there. A few anyways, so this would be a nice viable clump, and I could easily divide this more, like look for those growth points, and I could go down through the middle. But these are also well stuck together. I don't want to break any of them, and I don't need any more dahlias, so I'm fine with having that like that. Here's another crazy love, and you can see there's this one that's coming up here all crazy like this, and this is the old stem, so I'll probably plant it this way, and I'll probably just wind up cutting this one off just to get out of my way. I'm not seeing the growth points on this, but that doesn't mean they're not there. They can be really hard to see when the tuber's still fairly dormant. Yeah, again, I'm not seeing a lot of signs of growth points off of this one, but again, I'm sure they'll come. These are good, healthy looking tubers, so I'm sure they will push growth once they get into some moist potting mix and some warmer temperatures than what they've been in. So I'm gonna get the rest of these potted up. I think that kind of covers it for care of dahlias and getting them just potted up. Like I said, Saskatchewan, Canada, we need to pot them up early. I have a 110-day growing season, you know, frost-free season. So if I want to enjoy these flowers for any amount of time, I find this is the best way to do that, is to start them early inside, and then I can take them outside after danger of frost, and they should be flowering fairly soon for me. Otherwise, if I just plant them at the beginning of my season, I might not even see flowers, or they might just come right at the end of the season as we're starting to get frosts. So if you live in a longer season climate, you probably don't need to do this step, and you can just wait until after your last frost, which might have even already happened for you, and just plant them straight outside. But if you're in a cold climate like myself, start them inside and you'll have a much better chance of having flowers through most of your season. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Don't forget, when you're planting up your dahlias, to make sure that you put the variety tag in there so that you know what you have when you go to plant them outside.